The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Let me ask you something. Right now, at your job, in your relationships, in every room you walk into, someone is playing a game. They may not call it that. They may smile at you. They may say they're on your side. But make no mistake, the architecture of power is being constructed around you constantly by people who understand something that most of us were never taught. Power is not given. It is taken, or it is lost. Robert Greene spent years studying history's most ruthless strategists, cunning courtiers, fallen kings, and calculated seducers. He read Machiavelli and Sun Tzu. He studied Napoleon's rise and fall, the court of Louis XIV, the machinations of the Borgias, the cold logic of Otto von Bismarck. And from those thousands of years of human ambition and betrayal, he distilled one uncomfortable truth. The world is not run by the idealistic. It is run by those who understand how power actually moves. The 48 Laws of Power is not a book of virtues. It does not tell you how the world should work. It tells you, with unflinching, almost clinical precision, how the world does work. And here's what makes this book dangerous. You cannot opt out. Choosing to ignore the laws of power doesn't make you noble. It makes you a target. It makes you the person in the room who doesn't know the game is being played, which means you're already losing. The most important of these laws is never assume that the game is over, that the world has become too civilized for such things. The game never stops. Today, we're going to do something most people don't do with this book. We're not going to celebrate it, and we're not going to condemn it. We're going to understand it, the way a surgeon understands a scalpel. Precision, context, awareness. We'll examine 6 of the most psychologically penetrating laws from the 48. We'll look at the historical players who lived and died by these principles. And at the end, we'll ask the question that actually matters. What do you do with this knowledge? Stay with me. This is about to get uncomfortable. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Law 1. The first law. And not by accident. Greene places this law at the very beginning of the book as a warning, because it is perhaps the most common mistake made by talented, ambitious people. The mistake of believing that excellence speaks for itself, that your master, your employer, your patron will celebrate your brilliance. They will not. Always make those above you feel comfortably superior. In your desire to please and impress them, do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite, inspire fear and insecurity. The story Greene uses to illustrate this law is one of the most exquisitely tragic in French history. Nicolas Fouquet was the superintendent of finance under the young King Louis XIV of France. By any measure, Fouquet was extraordinary, intelligent, charming, a generous patron of the arts, a man of impeccable taste. And on August 17, 1661, he made the single most expensive mistake of his life. He threw a party. Not just any party. Fouquet invited the king and his entire court to his newly completed palace at Vaux-le-Vicomte, a structure of breathtaking magnificence. 6,000 candles illuminated the gardens. Lebrun had painted the ceilings. Molière himself performed a new play written for the occasion. The food, the fountains, the fireworks, everything was designed to signal one thing: look at what I have created. And Louis XIV looked. He looked at the palace that surpassed the royal palaces. He looked at the gardens that would later inspire Versailles. He looked at a man who, in a single evening, had demonstrated that he possessed more beauty, more refinement, and perhaps more real power than the King of France himself. 3 weeks later, Louis had Fouquet arrested. He was charged with embezzlement, but history has never been entirely convinced that was the real crime. The real crime was the party. The real crime was outshining the master. Fouquet spent the remaining 19 years of his life in prison. He died there. The lesson is not to be mediocre. The lesson is to be strategic about where and when you let your light shine, and to always ensure that those above you feel that they are the source of it. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. Power thrives in ambiguity. The moment your adversary, or even your ally, knows exactly what you want, they have leverage over you. They can obstruct it, co-opt it, or weaponize it. Greene's third law operates on this principle with ruthless efficiency. Keep people off balance and in the dark by never revealing the purpose behind your actions. If they have no clue what you are up to, they cannot prepare a defense. Greene points to Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Prussia, as perhaps history's most gifted practitioner of this law. Bismarck wanted a unified Germany under Prussian dominance, but he didn't announce it. He didn't campaign for it. He maneuvered. He would publicly advocate for diplomatic restraint while privately engineering wars. He would appear to capitulate to opponents, drawing them into positions they didn't realize were traps. He once said that political genius consists of hearing the distant hoofbeat of history and then leaping to grab the horseman's coattails before anyone else knew the horse was coming. In practice, this law operates on a deceptively simple mechanism: misdirection. You offer people a surface narrative, a decoy intention that is plausible, even flattering, but fundamentally false. They watch that hand while the other one moves. Magicians have known this for centuries. So have the most effective negotiators, the sharpest lawyers, and every political operator who has ever outlasted their enemies. The implication for your own life is stark. Stop announcing your plans. Stop explaining your moves before you make them. In a world that rewards oversharing, strategic silence is a radical act. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Words are a form of currency, and most people are recklessly, catastrophically broke. Greene's fourth law is built on an observation that cuts across every era of human history. The person who talks too much reveals too much. They expose their insecurities, their knowledge gaps, their emotional state, their intentions, all the things that Law 3 told you to hide. When you are trying to impress people with words, the more you say, the more common you appear and the less in control. Even if you are saying something banal, it will seem original if you make it vague, open-ended, and sphinx-like. Consider the legend of Coriolanus, the Roman general whose military genius was never in doubt, but whose political survival was destroyed by an inability to stop speaking. He disdained the people of Rome openly. He said what he thought, bluntly, proudly, without calculation. And Rome, which might have made him a god, sent him into exile instead. The powerful are often silent, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand that silence creates a vacuum. And when people encounter a vacuum in conversation, they fill it. They talk, they reveal, they negotiate against themselves. Watch a master negotiator sometime. They ask one precise question, then they stop. And the other side, unnerved by the silence, starts explaining, justifying, offering concessions that were never requested. The practical architecture of this law is simple. Edit yourself in real time. Before you speak, ask, does this serve my position or does it erode it? If the answer is anything other than a clear yes, say less, or say nothing at all. There is a reason the most powerful people in any room speak last and speak briefly. The room bends toward them precisely because they have not filled it. Law 28. Enter action with boldness. Timidity is not humility. Timidity is a strategy, and it is a losing one. Greene's 28th law confronts one of the great lies we tell ourselves, that hesitation is wisdom, that waiting is prudence, that the careful, cautious approach protects us from error. In the arena of power, Greene argues the opposite is true. If you are unsure of a course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts and hesitations will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires the bold, no one honors the timid. Julius Caesar understood this with a clarity that bordered on the terrifying. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon in 49 BC, leading his army into Roman territory in open defiance of the Senate, he was committing what was, legally and militarily, an act of treason. He could have negotiated, he could have waited, he could have sent an emissary, drafted a compromise, explored his options. Instead, he crossed. The decisiveness of that act, the sheer, almost reckless boldness of it, shifted the psychological landscape of the entire conflict. His enemies, who had believed he would hesitate, were suddenly on the defensive. The momentum was his. The narrative was his. History is littered with the names of men and women who possessed talent, resources, and opportunity, and squandered them all through hesitation. And it is adorned with the names of those who had far less, but who moved with such certainty, such committed audacity, that the world had no choice but to accommodate them. Boldness is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in spite of it, and to act completely, without the hedging and qualifying that signals to every observer that you are not entirely convinced of your own cause. If you are not convinced, no one else will be. Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Everyone has a weakness. Not a moral failing necessarily, though those exist too. A psychological vulnerability, a specific hunger that has never been fully satisfied, a fear that runs deeper than they will ever publicly acknowledge. Greene calls this the thumbscrew, the singular point of leverage that, once found, gives you extraordinary influence over another person. Everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. That weakness is usually an insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion or need, or a secret pleasure. The most common thumbscrews, Greene identifies, are these: the desperate need for validation and approval, a pressing financial anxiety, an unresolved insecurity about status, a secret vice, or an overwhelming, consuming vanity. History's most instructive example here is Cardinal Richelieu, the 17th century political architect of modern France. Richelieu understood that King Louis XIII was a man paralyzed by self-doubt and insecurity. He craved certainty. He craved a strong hand to lean on. And Richelieu, with extraordinary psychological precision, became that hand. He never challenged the king's authority publicly. He fed the king's need to feel decisive, powerful, and respected, while quietly engineering every major decision of state himself. Louis believed he was ruling France. Richelieu was ruling France. The thumbscrew is not a weapon of cruelty in Greene's framework, though it can be. At its most sophisticated, it is a tool of navigation, of understanding what moves people, what drives them, what they will trade, and what they will never surrender. In your own life, this law demands that you become a student of people, not a judge of them, a student. Listen more carefully than you speak. Notice what someone returns to again and again in conversation. Notice what makes them lighten up, what makes them stiffen. The thumbscrew reveals itself slowly to those patient enough to observe. Law 48. Assume formlessness. We arrive at the final law, and in many ways the deepest. Law 48 is not a tactic, it is a philosophy. It is Greene's answer to the one force that defeats every other strategy, every carefully constructed plan, every calculated maneuver: change. By taking a shape, by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack. Instead, be like water, formless. Accept that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water. Never bet on stability or lasting order. The image Greene returns to is water. Water does not insist on a shape. It does not mourn the vessel it has left. It finds the path of least resistance, not out of weakness, but out of supreme strategic intelligence. It cannot be struck. It cannot be cornered. It simply moves around whatever stands in its way. The historical figure who embodied this law most completely was Mao Zedong during the Chinese Civil War. outgunned and outnumbered by the nationalist forces of Chiang Kai-shek, who had superior weaponry, international recognition, and institutional power, Mao refused to fight the war that his enemies wanted to fight. He dissolved. He scattered his forces into the countryside. He became rural, mobile, impossible to locate, and impossible to decisively defeat. The nationalists, trained in conventional warfare, kept trying to hit a target that kept refusing to hold still. Mao won. In contemporary life, this law speaks to something profound about identity and strategy. The people who become trapped, professionally, personally, psychologically, are often those who have committed so rigidly to a single identity, a single approach, a single way of operating, that they cannot adapt when the environment shifts beneath them. Formlessness is not weakness. It is the ultimate sophistication. It is the recognition that the world is not static, that no advantage is permanent, and that the greatest power you can cultivate is the power to become whatever the moment demands. Mindful reflection, the ethical reckoning. And so we arrive at the question that this book has always provoked since the moment it was first published in 1998 and promptly banned in several American prisons for being too dangerous. Is the 48 Laws of Power evil? Is it a manual for manipulation? A blueprint for sociopathy? A celebration of the ruthless at the expense of the decent? Here is what I believe, and what I think Greene, if you read him carefully, is actually arguing. The laws are not prescriptions. They are observations. They are a map of human behavior drawn from thousands of years of real, historical evidence. The map does not create the territory. The territory already exists. We live in a world where power dynamics are real, where people maneuver, conceal, manipulate, and strategize, in boardrooms, in families, in governments, in friendships. Pretending otherwise is not virtue, it is naivety. And naivety, in an unequal world, is a luxury that tends to be paid for by the vulnerable. Understanding these laws gives you something invaluable: recognition. The ability to see the game as it is being played around you. The ability to understand when someone is deploying Law 3 against you, concealing their intentions. The ability to recognize when you are being managed, leveraged, or outmaneuvered before it is too late to respond. The 48 Laws of Power is ultimately about self-defense. It is about knowing the moves, so that when they are used on you, you are not helpless. The moral weight of this knowledge falls entirely on the person who carries it. A scalpel is not cruel. A surgeon who misuses it is. The same tool that allows manipulation also allows protection. The same understanding of human nature that enables exploitation also enables empathy, a deeper, clearer, less sentimental empathy than most people ever achieve, because it is built on truth rather than wishful thinking. The most dangerous person in any room is not the one who has read this book. It is the one who has read it, understood it, and decided, with full awareness, to use it with conscience, to protect rather than prey, to navigate rather than exploit. That is the version of power worth having. So here's what I want to know. Of the 6 laws we explored today, never outshine the master, conceal your intentions, always say less than necessary, enter action with boldness, discover each man's thumbscrew, and assume formlessness. Which one have you seen play out in your own life or career? Was it a colleague who got too ambitious and paid for it? A negotiation where the silence was louder than any word spoken? A moment where you watched someone move with such complete, unflinching boldness that the room simply shifted? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this kind of deep, uncomfortable, historically grounded analysis is what you come to this channel for, hit subscribe. We'll be going deeper, much deeper. Until next time, stay sharp, stay strategic, and keep reading.